Thank you for joining us wherever you are. This podcast episode is brought to you by the Old Ways Actual Play Team. This actual play uses the 7th edition Call of Cthulhu tabletop role-playing game rules by Chaosium. This actual play is performed by adults and in an adult setting. While we try very hard to stick to language for all ages, listeners should know that this podcast may include mature themes. All content, including names, places, events, companies, and etc., that may bear resemblance to entities living or dead, is strictly coincidental. My name is Michael Diamond, and for tonight's game, I will be your keeper. Thank you for joining us again in another episode of the Old Ways podcast. This is another episode in our prequel series for Horror on the Orient Express. We hope you enjoyed the last one. We truly hope you'll enjoy this one. Will this week's investigator please introduce themselves?
My name is Miranda, and I'll be playing Maggie Belenger.
So, a month or so ago, you got a letter from your Aunt Edith, who, unbeknownst to you, sometime in this past summer, the previous summer, in 1924, had left the shores of the U.S. and had decided to go and spread her wings and travel to England. She has evidently been staying in London for some time, and she's written you this very evocative letter saying that the city is boring her now, and she's desperate for some sense of home without having to come back. And so she asks in a very needy way, just with full of flowery language and full of emotion. She asks if you would please come to London and keep her company before the city just bores her to death. Do you feel like she would at least answer Edith's request?
Maggie's bag would have already been packed before she even got to the end of the letter.
She is a go-getter.
Yeah, she would be like reading this while she's laying stuff out on the bed to like get prepared to go.
She packs her bags. She spares no expense. She rushes off to join Aunt Edith in London.
Asking, well, I would have to get some money from my dad first.
Oh, sure.
It would be like bags packed, and I approach my father with my bags already packed, asking to go, but really saying I would like to go. From
what I can see here, I think your father is probably the type that would want to either see you have a wonderful time keeping your aunt company, or possibly maybe protect his sister.
Yeah.
So maybe he thinks that you would be a leveling influence on her. Maybe he doesn't know you very well. But you get to London. You've been there for probably a couple of weeks at this point. And you come in just after the new year. You spend the first couple of weeks trying to get in sync with the way Aunt Edith and how life kind of moves and shifts here. She's a much different person than you remember from even last year. She seems to have really fallen in with the Parisian mentality and lifestyle. She spends a lot of her mornings in bed asleep, whereas years ago in the States, and much like your father, she was up early and she was busy and she was doing things, and now she's very much relaxed. She chalks this up to being exposed to different lifestyles and to different people. She really prides herself on having spent time watching some of the more bohemian folks that are available in Piccadilly and maybe even some of the more slightly sketchy places like the East End of London. But she's also moved in some very upper society circles here too. She's given you in a couple of weeks a fair list of do's and don'ts about the way London works. She talks about being careful to cover up at night when you go out, just because of the smog and the London pea supers, as they call them here. She remarks that one of her service staff came down with a very terrible cold because of they inhaled some of this poisonous fog. So she mentions that. As the backdrop of this more laid-back, well-off lifestyle, how do you think Maggie's life would alter in those couple of weeks? Is that something she would give into? Or is it something that she would maybe use the extra time in the morning to do her own exploring?
Yeah, I feel like Maggie would be bored, for lack of a better word. She would probably eventually start doing her own exploring, but at first she would try to get her Aunt Edith to maybe go shopping with her, see if there's any social events she's been invited to recently that Maggie could attend with her. Really try to get her up and at 'em and get her out of what Maggie would see as a funk, because it's not kind of the old Aunt Edith that she remembers.
Sure.
If kind of all of her poking and prodding wasn't working, then eventually she would kind of maybe start to venture off on her own here and there a little bit. Explore the city.
Okay. Yeah, I think one of the important things that you notice is you notice that she has taken to, she probably drinks more now than she did when she was in the US. It's something that you definitely pick up on a fair amount, at least in the first couple of weeks. And you don't know if this is the reason why she's sleeping in later, which is fairly common for the folks who maybe drink a little too much.
Yeah.
But one morning, I would say mid-morning, when you're coming back in from already having gone to the market, or she lives very close to Hyde Park in London.
Okay.
So you have the ability in the morning to take just beautiful walks through wide open green spaces in a very posh neighborhood within London. So that does afford you some exploration. Hyde Park is enormous.
Yeah.
In comparison. So you would definitely have the ability to walk the park and investigate a bunch of different alcoves and green spaces. You return, and her butler, Gerald, asks if you would be so kind as to attend your aunt in the veranda. She's taking in brunch.
Of course.
You walk in. It was a little bit chilly this morning, not what you're used to so much in the U.S., a little warmer than that. And it's not nearly as cold here in January it is in the U.S. You had left from New York, obviously. One of the fast ocean liners probably brought you over here. It's probably a good 10 or 15 degrees warmer here than it is there. But yeah, this beautiful setup she has here, all sorts of different breakfast foods, and definitely Americanized and even Parisian as well. So there's tons of different fruit. There's wine at the table. She motions you over to the table. Please, come and sit. Please. It's, I know it's early. She laughingly takes what looks like a champagne glass up.
And I would probably grab a bite to eat and sit down. And of course, Aunt Edith, is there anything on the schedule today? Anything you'd like to go get out and do?
In fact, there is.
Oh.
Well, I've been reading a book recently, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it.
Okay.
It talks about finding the truth of the day. It's something I've come to recently, and I believe that there is a truth that we can find in every single day. Now, that truth might be different from Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday, but it's given me a sense of almost adventure.
Oh.
And I'm just wondering, what I'm really looking for is a cure for this boredom that I seem to be experiencing. She goes to a small plate of cheese that she's prepared for herself. I have decided to have a friend that I met stop in for brunch. So if you'd like to go get ready, he'll be here shortly.
Of course. Is this a formal affair? Should I dress casually?
I would say put on something nice.
Okay.
It is a lord, after all.
Oh, of course. Oh, I'll go get ready right now.
You can see, by the way, she's not dressed to receive guests.
Okay.
She is dressed, well, she's being very progressive with her clothes this morning.
Okay. At the risk of offending Aunt Edith, do you need some help up to your room to get ready, or maybe freshen up a little bit?
She stops and then sets the glass down. Oh my goodness, you're right. She seems to just absent-mindedly get up from the table. You should be here within about 30 minutes.
Okay.
You go and get prepared, and you come back downstairs. She has a 2-floor house that's near Hyde Park. She has afforded herself quite the location. And it's probably within about 30 or 35 minutes or so that there is a bell at the door, and you see Gerald, her butler, head towards the door. And she kind of pulls you a little closer and adjusts things on you, and she fusses and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So his name is Lord Walters, and he is the head of the London Spiritualist Society.
Oh.
Indeed. Now, they did come into a bit of a problem months ago. It didn't fully make the papers. We won't talk about it, but I think the Lord is maybe looking for a bit of patronage for his society. Things have not been so... They have not been in such good repair recently.
Understood. Financial problem.
It happens to some people. The butler comes back in, and you see a older man, probably a good 10 years older than her. So Lord Walters is probably close to his 60s. He's got large white mutton chops. He's very well, taken care of as far as his dress and his appearance. He looks as if he's probably served at some point in a war or one of. But he comes in. He's probably 6 feet tall, weighs in probably at about 175 pounds. He's mostly legs.
Okay.
So his legs arrive far before the rest of him do. And he's a very tall man in that regard. And he has a nice button-up black coat on. You can see that underneath of it, he has a bright white shirt and tie. He seems to be dressed for something a little bit more formal than you were probably expecting, but you dressed well enough to not worry too much.
Okay.
And he walks over, and the butler says, Lord Walters. Then Aunt Edith acknowledges him and says, Lord Walters, thank you for coming. And he does his best to pour on all sorts of charisma. He thanks her implicitly for allowing him to come over at such short notice, and he hopes that it's not too much of a bother. And she does her best to pat him on the hand socially and say everything is okay. Just come and sit down and let's have something, and we can talk about what the issues of the day are. With that, he turns to you and introduces himself as Lord Walters. He doesn't so much extend his hand, but he offers you a greeting.
Yeah, and Maggie would do maybe a slight curtsy, because she thinks that that's what's formal or appropriate in this situation. Say, it's my pleasure to meet you. I'm so excited that my Aunt Edith has invited me to visit with you.
Always nice to see our American cousins here.
Indeed.
You guys exit towards, not back towards where you guys were having food earlier, but a completely different dining room where the staff has set up food and drink, and you can hear the staff as you guys get towards the room. You can hear the staff kind of scuttling out of the room, out into the remains of the house.
Okay.
They seat you, and Lord Walters looks at Edith and says, "It's no secret that the society has run afoul of some challenges within the past few years. Our members have either grown too old to care for our studies, or they have grown more interested in studying other things. And so we are attempting, as best we can, to maintain our chapter house. But truth be told, is becoming more difficult. It's only become more difficult after the war, what with some of our members losing sons and other family members in service. Maggie can definitely tell that he wears this very heavily.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he says it, he feels he's exhausted. He follows up and says, it is not my normal purview to ask for assistance or support. Lords are supposed to be able to afford what we can afford. Edith's very good about being generous. And you know this. You know it's in her nature to be generous. And so when she turns to him and says, whatever your needs are, we will meet them, you gasp a bit.
Yeah.
Because you know that that money is probably going to in some way come from your father.
Mm-hmm.
At least in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And you have no idea what Lord Walters is asking yet.
Yeah, I kind of want to get a little lighten the situation a little bit, because I can see that this is weighing on him, and I want just to brighten the situation up a little bit, but I also kind of want to feel out what he's all about. And so Maggie would probably bring up, Lord Walters, my Aunt Edith here, my dear aunt, says that you're the head of the London Spiritualist Society. Now, what is that? Do you do like tea readings? Because I had my tea leaves read once back. I was actually visiting New York, and this very nice woman read my tea leaves, and it was quite a gas. And I actually invited her to a party. Is that the sort of thing that you do? You know, host parties so that women can get their tea leaves read?
He turns to you and gives you a tight smile. I apologize. Perhaps I have not been open enough with what we do. We're a austere and respected group. We've been active for several decades. In fact, since before the Victorian era. We have two goals: the advancement and expansion of knowledge of what may lie beyond. You see, the Spiritualist Society is made up of many lords, ladies, many of Britain's finest. Unfortunately, the society, as I mentioned, has fallen into a bit of disrepair. And our specifics, as far as research and practice and study, lean more towards higher-minded thought, the expansion of understanding into mystical arts.
When you say what may lie beyond, do you mean the afterlife in heaven?
One might put it like that.
And I feel like Maggie initially felt like this guy, like this is some sort of kind of a shady deal.
Sure.
But now it kind of like pulls at her heart, because she would, love to know what happened to her mom after she died. And like death is a pretty sore subject for Maggie. So now she's like, I feel torn between wanting to learn more about this guy, but kind of thinking it's like he's just trying to get money out of my Aunt Edith and my family. What kind of studies are these that you do? I've never heard of anything like this before, and I can't quite fathom how you would study. We don't know what happens after death.
Oh, there are many different methods which could be studied, which could be leaned upon in such quests. It's a movement I took as a younger man, but I have been a part of and in some ways assisted with the communication aspect of the afterlife.
Speaking with the dead, like with crystal balls and things like that?
Nothing so vaudevillian.
Aunt Edith, you're a member of this society?
She brushes a few strands of hair away from her face. I met Lord Walter when I came here initially amongst other professionals. It's not as if it's a some strange voodoo parlor. They're all very directed and well appointed.
Well, yeah, if this is all true, then I think that sounds quite exciting. Maybe possibly I could accompany you, or maybe we could see a demonstration possibly.
Lord Walter turns to you. Of course, the group itself in the past several months has become even more fractured than it used to be. There are many members who will either no longer attend or simply show concern over the potential social implications of it. You understand.
Of course.
So,
even stateside, I know that people that deal in these sorts of spiritual matters can sometimes be chased out of towns. Even
it's because they're charlatans. It's because they don't spend the time researching and learning. These are practices that have been in existence since the time of David. They simply have been hidden.
You say they are charlatans, but are you not then?
He gives you more of a sharp look. No, madam, I am not. Edith calls for another round of drinks.
Yes. Well, and Edith, I'd be concerned about you investing in something when we don't know truly what we would get back from the money.
Lord Walters has assured me that there is going to be, there's going to be quite the renaissance for this. And I'm willing to help.
And Lord Walters, if my Aunt Edith is to contribute to your society, what would be the benefit to her?
Well, he brushes his chin a bit. I have been interested in calling on her from time to time. I admit I am not as young as I once was, but as a lord, I do have many social advantages.
For a second, Maggie thought that he was hitting on her aunt.
I could see where she might think that.
Aunt Edith doesn't seem too interested in the boring life of social advantages right now.
Edith takes the fresh glass of wine that is dropped off in front of her and says, "Can we please just finish our meal and let's put aside any talk of finances. It's bored me already." Lord Walter kind of just simply nods and goes to his food, and they pick up very general conversation.
Okay. I would drop it as well, out of respect for my Aunt Edith.
Of course. The brunch finishes probably another half an hour or so. Lord Walters is very respectful when he leaves. He thanks your aunt and you for the conversation and the time, and then kind of takes his hat and heads out the door.
Well, that was quite an interesting visit, Aunt Edith.
Isn't he interesting? I find him fascinating.
I would say he's quite interesting. Have you been to any gatherings where you've seen, any demonstrations about these studies that they're doing?
I have not as of yet. He has not been able to convince me that he can get his society together.
Well, that's unfortunate.
It is.
I would love to see some sort of demonstration.
Yes, I would be interested in seeing it as well. You see Gerald walking in the room with the two of you, and he says, "Excuse me, madam." He hands your Aunt Edith a note, takes the envelope out, and opens it up. Interesting.
Well, do go on. What is it?
Well, a few months ago, I met a professor while I was here in London. I was out at an event, and I bumped into this professor. His name is Dr. Julius Smith. and he is inviting me to attend an event
Oh,
at the British Museum.
how exciting. When is it?
It looks like it's just, she lists the date a couple of days from now.
Oh, well, we should go. Does it say on there if you can bring a +1?
Mags, I can bring whomever I like.
Good point. Well, I propose we go to this event. That sounds splendid.
Wonderful. Now, you must tell me, how is your father?
He's doing well. He was a little bit worried about you, to be honest.
Yes, well, Georgie was always the type to worry.
Oh, that he is. But, we love him for it. And it got me here with you.
Indeed. This is much less boring now that you're here.
I'm glad to hear that, Aunt Edith. And, we'll let my father deal with the work back at home and, we can have fun. And I feel like this event at the museum is probably the perfect start to that now.
Yes.
I wonder if that Lord Walters is going to be there.
Oh, perhaps. The doctor, Dr. Smith, and I, we got to be fairly fast friends.
Oh. Where did you meet him, did you say?
At a cafe.
Oh.
He was studying something on archaeology at the time, and I noticed he had a drawing in his book of a strange temple. And I told him that I was curious about it, and that I loved to travel, and we got to talking.
Oh, he travels that much? Oh, he must be quite interesting to talk to. He's been so many places.
I would say so.
I would certainly love to travel. Wow, yeah, I'm excited now for this event.
I won't give you a role on it because I think you probably know your Aunt Edith pretty well.
Okay.
She is not telling you everything she knows about the professor. She is hiding something.
Okay.
The look on her face is like the cat that caught the canary.
All right.
How you spot it, though, is a totally different way. What you spot is the letter in her hand.
Mm-hmm.
And the letter in her hand is signed, Dearest Julius.
Yeah, I was immediately thinking before you even said that love interest. There's something going on between them.
She kind of folds up the note and tucks it back in the envelope.
Maggie wouldn't bring it up, but she would be excited about it. I want to see how these two interact and like see how it plays out.
It's definitely piqued her interest.
Yeah.
Other than getting out and exploring London, even albeit in the winter, what else do you think Maggie fills her day with while she's here?
Probably shopping. She would probably also want to take some notes. She has a travel journal just to take notes on maybe life in London, how it's, how different it is from being in the States, things like that. Maybe venture to some small cafes and try different kinds of foods. See if there's anything to experience here that I can't experience back home.
Most people from the States are not prepared for just how culturally different London is, from the sense that there are so many different cultures that can find a home there. You have really a melting pot of India, of East Asia to Africa to so you're really, Paris, obviously French culture's there as well. There's all sorts of things that you can run into there. It can border on overwhelming.
Yeah, that's a lot. She would really want to explore and try new things. She wants to, if there's a fashion style that she hasn't seen before, she wants to go into that shop. And she's one of those people that will walk around a shop and touch everything and just experience things. Even if she's not planning on buying anything, she just wants to really take everything in.
Yeah, I would say that you probably spend the next couple of days preparing, not so much preparing for the event at the Maudsley collection, but I would say that you take in more of what London is, maybe with a bit of a sharper eye, maybe even stop into some of the places around the British Museum. It is definitely within firing distance of where you're staying at. It would be easy for you to get to.
Yeah.
But moreover, this period of time in London in January is also a little rainy. So your time outside is a little limited unless you want to carry on with an umbrella or have your travels done from awning to awning, as it were.
Yeah, and I would imagine there would certainly be afternoons where Maggie didn't want to go out in the the London weather, and it would be one that she maybe would spend on the patio, like underneath an awning, maybe sketching or just journaling about her times spent there.
Yeah, you do get more than an opportunity to sketch out some of that corner of Hyde Park, where there are some beautiful columns kind of lead their way into that grand entrance of Hyde Park, which is just, it's beautiful from what you can see. It feels like being, for you, it probably feels like being in Rome, even though you're not in Rome. You're not used to these many stone columns in front of a park.
Yeah.
Even the seeming dreariness of a London January does not dampen Maggie's spirits, not when it comes to being in a totally different place.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we will leave Maggie in the Hyde Park home in preparation for the event at the British Museum.
Okay.
So I want to thank you all for joining us for another episode, and I hope to see you all next week.